Hello, everybody. Y'all forgive me for hitting that go live button a minute too late, but y'all know when I have interesting guests on our webinar series, I take every opportunity to pick their brain and learn everything I can before, during, and after the webinar. And I am so excited about today's guest, Dr. Guy Riekeman. This is his first time to be a presenter on our webinar series. And I have been counting the days because I am so excited, not just about the presenter, but about the topic. It's an incredible honor to have you here today. A little bit of background, everybody knows Dr. Riekeman, but he's an international lecturer, author, second generation chiropractor, graduated from Palmer College, 1972, became a successful chiropractor and businessman, creating companies and seminar programs to improve chiropractic practices and to facilitate personal growth, which again, as we all know, we've benefited from that incredible work he did. He was the first pioneer of video education in 1977, had the largest practice management and personal growth integrity seminar in chiropractic before he decided to shift his energy into one of my favorite parts of chiropractic, and that would be academia and education. He, as you know, became Chancellor of Palmer College of Chiropractic before becoming the fourth president of Life University in 2004. In 2017, was promoted to Chancellor of Life University, where he served until January of 2020, when he was named the first Chancellor Emeritus in the history of the university. And now he is known as being a visionary in the chiropractic profession and using his influence and passion to help spread chiropractic, not just around the country, but around the world, which is what led to the development of My Lifestyle IQ, which is the first remote patient management system to bring healthy lifestyle advice and programs to the chiropractic patient. And just in case you thought he was done, he's not. Because he's currently opening chiropractic lifestyle studios and clinics. So this is a man who does not quit. And so we have so much to benefit from his knowledge today and from his love and passion of chiropractic. So thank you so much for being here.
It's really my pleasure. I was picking up on a couple of things you said, two in particular. One is I sometimes ask people not to read my resume because I'm not sure whether people think that I've done a lot or I just can't hold a job. But I have been obviously involved in chiropractic. And the other thing that when I was getting ready to do this, October 1972 is when I graduated from Palmer College. And almost to the day, literally almost to the day, this is my 50th year in chiropractic, 5 decades. I always feel like I've been in chiropractic longer than that, though. My dad was a 1947 graduate of Palmer College. He came in those big post-war classes, and he graduated in 47. People in his class were people like Bill Blair and various other people. But my dad went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and set up on South Central Avenue in a little cow town that Albuquerque was at the time on Route 66. And he and my mom opened up a practice, and they were charging $2 per visit. I look back at my dad's life compared to where we are now, and there's a point to this. There was no research in chiropractic at that particular time, other than some of the work that BJ and the other chiropractic presidents and colleges were doing. There certainly was no insurance or third-party pay. There really also was still a difficult time to get a license. While there was licensure in a lot of states, including New Mexico, one of the ways that the MDs were keeping chiropractors out, even after there was licensure, was that they had basic science boards. In other words, when you graduated from chiropractic college, you had to, since there were no national boards back then, you had to go to a state like New Mexico. There was no universal cover or licensure. And you had to sit through a basic science exam, which is basically what our Part 1 national boards are now. So it was chemistry and physiology, diagnosis, pathology, et cetera. And once you got past the basic science board, which all doctors had to take, dentists, chiropractors, orthopedic people, osteopaths, you had to get through the basic science part first. Then you could sit for licensure in your particular discipline. So there were the basic science boards, and behind them, in this case, was the New Mexico Chiropractic Board. The basic science boards were all, and I mean all, I emphasize that word, all run by medical doctors. In fact, when my father passed away, Joseph Keating, who did so much recording the history of our profession, was doing a study on these basic science boards and those that tended to keep chiropractors out. And in his studies, he found that only once in the entire history of basic science boards in our profession was a chiropractor ever appointed by a governor to sit on a basic science board to make sure that chiropractic and chiropractic hopefuls had a fair shot at getting through the basic science exam, because these tests were all essays. They were all subjectively evaluated. And interestingly enough, and I never knew this literally until my adult life, my dad was the only chiropractor ever appointed to sit on a basic science board in New Mexico by a governor. I can tell you a lot of stories. When I was growing up, of course, the only thing that I noted was that my dad was always gone on weekends up to Santa Fe doing something in chiropractic. Now that I've reached the point I have in my life, I look back and I go, what an amazing guy. He was a really kind, sweet, gentle soul, but man, he loved chiropractic. And during this fight for licensure and to give chiropractors a fair shot at being licensed, he and 3 other doctors, of course, were working hard. 2 of their offices were firebombed. The other 2, they went in, poured gasoline on all their files and destroyed their files. So it's really hard for us in today's world to imagine what it was like to be a chiropractor back in those days. When I went to school in 1969 at Palmer College, and I didn't go there to become a chiropractor, I went there for a 1-year stint, I thought, to avoid being drafted. During the Vietnam War, I was changing schools. I was a basketball player, and I was leaving the college I was at and headed somewhere else, but you had to sit out a year. And my dad convinced me to go sit it out at Palmer rather than sitting out at home, which meant you would be drafted for sure. And so I went in 1969 and heard a speaker by the name of Reggie Gold in an old, dank, dark auditorium in Davenport, Iowa in 1969. And something that was said during that presentation hit me in my heart. And I said, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my lifetime. I graduated, like I said, exactly 50 years ago, almost to the day, in 1972. But even back then, in 1972, there were chiropractors still being arrested. 2 of them in Louisiana were the last 2 chiropractors that were arrested in jail. And it was because the man who ran the American Medical Association with an iron fist was from Louisiana, and he swore that no chiropractor would ever be licensed in Louisiana. So just by that cultural activity, Louisiana was the last place. And of course, during my lifetime, we saw the American Medical Association, back when Medicare came in 1963, form the Committee on Quackery, which they said never existed, until a whistleblower anonymously smuggled documents out of the headquarters in Chicago and handed them to Lou Sportelli. And of course, that became the basis of the Wilkes case, which eventually made it to federal court and showed that the AMA had been actively involved in a federal trade violation of trying to restrict our profession. But what that, more than the dramatics of that, what that had meant was that for years, chiropractic couldn't make inroads in equal pay and compensation. We couldn't get research money. In fact, it wasn't until 1996 when my good friend Mike Crawford, who was the chancellor at Palmer College when I became president there, and who taught me how to be a president. In 1996, he was in Washington, D.C., visiting Tom Harkin, one of his best friends, who he had grown up with from early on children. And he mentioned to Tom Harkin that there had never been any money allocated for chiropractic research. And Harkin said to Mike, let's go down the hall. We've got to rectify this. And they went down the hallway and they pulled Kennedy out of a budget meeting that he was in, explained the issue to him. He went back into the budget meeting and put $5 million, what we used to call pork, $5 million of money allocated for alternative healthcare research. And it was the beginning of the National Institutes of Alternative Healthcare And of course, Harkin knew you get 5 million this year. The program is never going to go away in Washington, D.C. And every year that number has increased. And of course, now we know that the Office of Alternative Healthcare at NIH is one of the most powerful organizations in the world. So it was interesting to see my dad in 1963, while the AMA was forming this committee on quackery, the isolation that they created for him and for other chiropractors. But you know what? They never stopped. They just kept going on. And then insurance came in the 80s, and then it went away, as we all know. And society, I think above all, has been changing over a period of time. My dad and the chiropractors of that day were just true believers. They knew that every person that walked in their office was going to get well because of chiropractic care. My chiropractor, until he passed away about a year ago, was Roy Sweat. He was of that generation. At 93 years of age, still seeing patients. And I have to tell you, there's not a patient that walked into Roy Sweat's office that he didn't believe was going to get well because of chiropractic care. Society, however, was not ready for, I guess, that big idea of chiropractic back then. And so these chiropractors, like my dad, saw patients for short-term care. There was no such thing as, quote, preventative care, corrective care, wellness care, those things that we sort of accept today. They were truly taking people that everything else had failed and getting them well through chiropractic. But today things have changed. Eisenberg out of Harvard in 1989 was hired by the medical community to do a study on the use of alternative care. How many people were using alternative healthcare as their primary approach to health? There were rumblings in the culture that something was happening, and they were trying to get on top of what it was. He published a report in 1990. It was a famous report, hit all the major newspapers, front page on some of them. And what they found in 1990 was that there were 37 million more visits to alternative healthcare practitioners than all the mainstream medical doctors and medical specialists combined. Now, you've got to know that that shook the medical community to its roots. All of a sudden, all sorts of accusations began to fly. Like the only people that were using chiropractic care were people who were uneducated and were being duped by, and I quote, these charlatans and quacks. And yet there was a study done at Stanford University, Sean Austin, who found that people using chiropractic care as their primary approach, or alternative care as their primary approach, that 50% of them had a bachelor's degree or higher, where those who stayed in traditional medicine had a high school education or less. It was just actually the opposite of what they were speculating. And then the Office of Alternative Futures in Washington, D.C. found that the average consumer said this. They said, we are looking for a healthcare system that supports our social values. And the question is, well, what the heck does that mean? And here was what they found as social values. People that believed that smoking was bad for you and that making the decision to do it or not to do it was a personal decision. People that were looking and recognizing that exercise and nutrition made a difference, not only in their immediate health, but in prevention and their well-being throughout the course of their lifetime. You get the idea. So what people were saying was, we aren't rejecting medicine. In fact, only 4.4% of people said they would not go to a medical doctor under any circumstance. Most of these people because of some negative experience that they or someone they knew had in that arena. But that in fact, 95.6% of people said, we want a healthcare system that reflects these healthy, preventative, social values. So it wasn't just that my dad and these early chiropractors had a notion of something bigger and more natural, organic, holistic healthcare, but society was eventually in the process of catching up with them. And that's where I'd like to pick up today, because I want to talk about what I believe are the two major changes that are affecting healthcare and chiropractic today. People always ask me, when I was the president at Palmer, they would ask me, what do you think the future of chiropractic is going to be? What is your prediction? And I have to tell you, I don't know. I would tell them on a good day that everything looked rosy and bright for us. On a bad day, I tell them that, we were in deep trouble. But the real answer was that chiropractic is going to become whatever chiropractors make it. Chiropractic is a reflection of the consensus, the social value that we hold as a profession. But I'm going to add one other thing to that. It's not only what we see the future of chiropractic to be and what we hold dear in practice, but it's also what the culture is demanding of us. So here are the two issues from 100,000 feet. We're going to break them down a little bit. But I believe the two big issues that are affecting our profession today is a switch from chiropractic being a spinal orthopedic profession. And again, I'm going to reference, not that we don't do that. That is our primary clinical approach. But for what purpose? For what purpose? Is it to straighten out the spine? Is it just to get rid of low back pain? Is it just to make someone's muscles feel better? So when I say that there's been a switch from a spinal orientation, that is as an outcome and a branding and identity to the consumer. And the switch has been, over the last 10 to 15 years, towards a very neurocentric kind of view as to the impact of chiropractic. And I'm going to look at that in a moment historically. The other thing that has changed, literally has changed our entire lives, is the internet. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but think about this. The internet gave people access to information that before that particular time was only available to small groups of people. For one of the things that occurred was they demystified medicine. Today, when a patient walks into a doctor's office of any sort, they usually have been on the internet, on Google and various other things, finding what treatments are available, what people say about these treatments, what the side effects are. And so the consumers are much more educated these days before they even begin their journey into healthcare. The second thing that the internet did was allow us to create tribes that literally we can at any particular time find people anywhere in the world that are having or wanting the same kind of experience that we're wanting. Before, the only way to get the society, the consumer educated was to spend massive amounts of money on national advertising, on TV and radio, etc. And because of that, chiropractic was always at a disadvantage compared to the medical association. Today, you can use the internet, and with small amounts of money, but recognizing how the internet works, you can associate with people all over the world that hold the same values that you do and form what are called tribes. And finally, and this is the third thing we're going to talk about extensively today relative to the internet, that people are living their lives remotely. That with an iPhone, people have reduced what they do on a day-to-day basis that heretofore would have taken forever to do. When's the last time when you got ready to set up a flight that you thought about contacting a travel agent? In fact, to be honest with you, they don't exist anymore. When's the last time when you wanted to watch a video that you thought you'd go down to Blockbuster and rent a video for $5.99? Doesn't exist anymore. The reason is people can do all of those things when they're laying in bed at 10 o'clock at night before they go to sleep with an iPhone. Now, I want to make a comment. These two things, this focus on neuroplasticity and the neurology of our profession and the internet, are relatively young activities. We've only had iPhones, they just celebrated their 10-year anniversary last year. So while some people believe these things have been around forever, in fact, they've been around for a relatively short period of time. And one last comment on the functional neurology issue. We did a study when I was at Life University on how many hours we spent teaching students the spine, biomechanics, bones, muscles, and how much time we spent teaching the nerve system. And we were shocked at the disparity of how extensive the biomechanics discussion was and hours to the neuro discussion. And yet we have from the beginning of our profession always said that we were a neurology-based profession. And that's one of the things that we did at Life. In fact, we altered the curriculum so that a student graduating there would graduate at a diplomate level of neurology or understanding of the nerve system. Incredible. So let's do something really quick. Just a quick overview of the history of neurology and chiropractic. Obviously, if we go back to the beginning of the profession in 1895, Palmer had two kind of unique factors in retrospect that were the basis of the profession. Number one, he believed in what we call today in philosophy a vitalistic idea. The idea that the body was a self-developing, self-healing, self-maintaining mechanism, and that the body knew how to be healthy as long as you kept it free of interference. The other factor was he believed that the nerve system controlled how the body functioned. Now, he couldn't prove it in 1895. 1895, healthcare was like the Wild West. Everybody that had an idea was publishing a book. And, they were talking about whether the main control system in the body was the serous system or the cardiovascular system. Palmer believed it was the nervous system. And then in 1929, Stevenson published the first text and said that there were four components to this relationship between the spine and the nerve system, all of which today we've disproven to a large degree. But the four components were their best knowledge at the time, that a spine that was subluxated or out of functional activity had a vertebra that was out of position with the one above and the one below, was occluding and opening, impinging a nerve, and interfering with the transmission of mental impulses. Now, we know today that you can't have a bone out of a place with the one above and the one below. The spine works as a unit. We also know that in most cases, it's not that there's just a closing of an intervertebral foramina pinching a nerve, which was the concept at the time. But as we know today in our understanding of how the spine functions, that the impact on the nerve system happens in a diverse number of ways. And of course, we can't measure mental impulses. So a lot of what they published in 1929 was a good model based on what they knew then. When I went to school in 1969, in Gray's Anatomy and Guyton's Physiology, they were still talking about that there were two control systems in the body. The nerve system, which they said controlled the internal functions, and then you had a completely disconnected immune system that was responsible for adapting the organism to the environment. And Guyton's actually said in 1969, those two systems don't talk to each other. Then in 1990, research came out when they were doing the study of cancer on skin, and they found a connection between the nerve system and these cancer cells and the function of the body, and the profession of and concept of neuroimmunology was born. And then, of course, as we kind of fast forward, Felicia came along with the 5 components of the subluxation complex: spinal malfunction, neurophysiology, myopathophysiology, histopathology, and the degeneration of bone tissue when the spine isn't working correctly. Today, that has evolved in our understanding of the nerve system. And of course, we know the big concept today is neuroplasticity, which, if you're anything close to my age, you understand how incredible this concept is. Because when we went to school, we were taught, and until just recently, that if you damage the nerve, if you damage the brain or spinal cord, there was no recovery, that there was no repair of that system. And yet today, we absolutely know in functional neurology that that system can be repaired, and that the body, in fact, can react and build new pathways, even if there are permanently damaged pathways, for people to be able to function properly. One of the questions I asked a group of friends of mine who are functional neurologists, I said, if you had to give me a list of 3 to 5 research articles, and you may want to write these down and hunt them up, 3 to 5 research articles that you think are the most critical relative to chiropractic, what would those be? And so we don't have time to do a great in-depth study on these 5 areas or 5 topics, but I'm going to walk you through them and make kind of a story out of them. Our previous view of a spinal malfunction was that we get inflammation and pain at the area of the joint where the problem was. But today we know that, in fact, that pain is not occurring there at that particular site, but is occurring in the brain because of the pain receptor networks inside the brain. So, you've heard the stories about someone who has their arm cut off, and even though they have no arm, they can still feel pain in that arm. Well, that's what we're talking about here, that when the spine malfunctions, it in fact causes changes in neuroreceptors in the brain, and the pain, the experience of pain is what's going on inside the brain, not necessarily at the joint. In addition to that, they discovered, keep moving through some of these articles, they discovered that in fact, because of that, the brain actually shrinks. So that when we have spinal malfunction and the body's not working correctly, we actually get a decrease in the size, in the function of these neuroreceptors inside the brain. There have been a number of studies as to what happens when we start affecting changes in the function of the spine. There was one particular study that was done over 12 weeks of time. It's included in these articles. And they actually found that the adjustments changed the pain processing network in the brain, and therefore it actually affected the patient's experience of pain. They also found that when we begin, and I'll use their words, to manipulate the spine, you could either cause the brain to be stimulated or understimulated based on which area of the spine that you were adjusting based on analysis. And they found that these changes happen relatively quickly. There was a study done in which they took 19 patients, and these 19 patients, some of them they were all given at times scam adjustments, and other times were given actual adjustments. The chiropractors performing the sham and the actual adjustments had a background of 15 years of experience. And it was interesting, they only saw the patients for 3 visits. At that particular time, the patients, when they were questioned on a qualitative level, absolutely, without question, were able to identify which adjustments were real, because they said they could feel the changes in their body and in the function of their body. But on a more quantitative level, they found 2 interesting issues. Number one, they found that when they were affecting the dysfunctional spinal joints, they were actually altering how the brain was integrating information. And they also noted that the primary change in the brain was predominantly happening in the prefrontal cortex. So again, under no circumstances could someone say that having your brain not integrated, having pain receptors in the brain firing, indicating pain in the body, and having a brain that's shrinking because of spinal malfunction is a good effect. And obviously, with chiropractic care, the studies show that these things begin to normalize because of what we do as chiropractors. It doesn't mean that we don't get tremendous results with the symptomatology that people come in with, but now we're beginning to get an understanding of how that mechanism works, and that we can focus and rest our energy on the effects of chiropractic because of our relationship to the nerve system. This was a study that was done in New Hampshire. It was done with the employees, the New Hampshire state employees, and like any state government, if they're going to spend money on healthcare for their state employees, they're going to keep track of, which activities save them money, which activities cost them money. There were 2 studies. The first one was done on the cost of healthcare per employee of those who were under chiropractic or had chiropractic care included in their program and those that didn't. Now, that doesn't mean that chiropractors were the gatekeeper, doesn't mean that they were the only kind of care that they received. It's just if chiropractic care was part of the patient's healthcare regimen during the course of that year, how did that affect healthcare costs? And look at this. In 2014, with chiropractic care, they were spending a little over $2,000 per patient. Without chiropractic care, it was costing the New Hampshire healthcare system almost $7,000 per patient. And this was long before we realized the massive epidemic of opioids in our country. They also studied at that particular time patients who were under chiropractic care, how much did they on the average spend on opioids, and those without chiropractic care, how much was spent on opioids. And you can see the information here. Those under chiropractic care, they were spending about $200 a year. Those who were absent chiropractic care were spending over $900 a year on opioids. We know that chiropractic works. And you say, Well, was it the adjustment, the in-office care of the person that caused them to not have to spend all this money on these other activities? And I'm going to suggest to you that it's bigger than just the in-office activity. It's the lifestyle that when patients get under chiropractic care and understand what we're doing, this natural, conservative, non-drug approach to healthcare, that people start questioning things like, should I take drugs? How should I, birth and raise my children? Should I be under regular care or only see a doctor when I have an immediate problem that needs to be addressed in usually a high intensity, highly expensive, with a lot of side effects activity? So it's more than just the in-office care. It's the understanding and education of the patient that creates this different lifestyle. And so we know these things happen when people get cared. There's research documenting all of it. It creates pain-free movement. It alters the cervical curve so that you get better spinal biomechanical function. It improves HRV responses, recovery responses, and sleep. We know when you adjust someone, the frontal lobe lights up, which is why people have these experiences when they get adjusted for the first time. It obviously eliminates symptoms. Based on Rose's work out of New York, they're finding that people with muscular sclerosis and other neurodegenerative diseases are seeing immediate changes with upper cervical adjustments. It improves the immune system biomarkers. It increases resilience. The work by Dick Holtz out of Chicago, the only research article in chiropractic ever published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, showed that chiropractic patients, when they're under care, their blood pressure is affected, is lowered. You can read the rest of the results. We know that these things have been proven to be the results of appropriate chiropractic care. So watch, our orientation today has got to be about neurology, not about bones and joints per se, even though that's our approach to helping neurology is by improving the biomechanics of the spine. But our story has to be built around, in my opinion, with where we're going and what's in society today is important, which is the aspect of chiropractic as a neurology-based profession. Now I want to talk a little bit quickly about the internet and remote management. So I'm going to make a couple of quick points here. You can read what I've got here, but I want to focus on the first 3 or 4. The first one is this, that people are living lives of remote management today, and we'll talk about that. Secondly, that this idea of remote patient management, living through the internet on our iPhones and computers, has now become a major part of medical approach to patient care. In fact, we'll talk about it. 20% of cell phone users in the United States, which is everybody, let's face it. So 20% of all cell phone users in the United States are already having their healthcare managed by an app that their MD gave to them. So 1 out of 5 patients seeing an MD have an app that the MD is using to measure their healthcare. And then I'm going to suggest this, which goes back to this whole notion that we talked about with the New Hampshire studies, going all the way back to the issues with my dad's generation, that in fact, because of the lifestyles we live, which are very much a mechanistic lifestyle, based on looking for treatments from the outside in, drugs, surgery, and radiation, waiting until we get sick before we see a doctor, identifying and labeling healthcare as simply the absence of disease. All of these kinds of things have created a lifestyle in our society, and it has created a massive number of lifestyle diseases. And that with our chiropractic approach, that if these lifestyles can change based on who we are as chiropractors and our principles, that because they're lifestyle diseases, if you change the lifestyle, the diseases are going to change. This is truly, if we were looking at initial intensive care, corrective and prevention care, and wellness care, this is truly our approach to what we would call prevention and wellness care. And we're going to get into it. The last 4 points you understand, we've been talking about how chiropractic impacts people. So let's get into it. Here we go. Remote lifestyle management. I'm sure most of you are familiar with a car company called Carvana. They have no showrooms anywhere. Carvana is, if you drive through major cities like Atlanta, they have these 8-story glass cylinders. They call them car slot machines. They have cars stacked up in these glass cylinders. You can see them as you drive by. I was watching the NBA finals a couple of years ago with a friend, and at halftime, he ordered a car, and it was delivered the next morning. He drove it for a week and then decided whether he wanted it or not. Lending Tree, we're familiar with this. When's the last time you actually put on a suit, went down to your local bank and begged them to give you a mortgage? You know, today you get online. There are companies that will compete for your mortgage just by you entering information online. I love their commercial. It's a cartoon commercial of a guy sitting around in his underwear getting applications from banks competing for his service. The American Banking Association, I just read an article. They say that by the year 2034, there will not be one branch bank left anywhere in the United States. They'll have their big headquarters downtown where the corporate offices are, and everyone else will be doing all of their banking, which we do mostly today, online with our iPhones. I'm going to talk about White Plains Hospital in a moment. There's a medical school that no longer has classes. It's all online. And I'll just skip because of time. The ultimate of this is Amazon, right? I was laying in bed last night, and it was 10 o'clock at night, and some things were on my mind. Here's what I did between 10 and 10:30. I set up 2 flights for trips I have coming up. I set up a flight for one of our employees that's going to go to a seminar. I ordered some golf equipment. I also ordered some products that I wanted for my kitchen that are going to show up later this afternoon. I made an appointment with a doctor that I'm seeing, and I also made reservations a month out for 2 restaurants that Eric and I have been wanting to go to in Detroit. I didn't drive to the store. I didn't hope to see a travel agent. I didn't pick up the phone and call anybody. It was all done online. People are standing on the sidelines of their kids' lacrosse games, ordering dinner that they're going to pick up on the way home or be delivered to their home. So it's there when they get there, and their groceries are showing up on their front doorstep. We live our lives to a large degree today remotely, and it's freed us up. Think if you had to go buy a pair of shorts because you're getting ready to play in a golf tournament, you wanted some new shorts, you go spend half a day running to a store and finding somewhere to try on clothes versus just ordering them online and they show up that evening. We live lives of remote management. 58% of cell phone users already have a health-related app on their phone. As I mentioned, 20% have an app that they're using that was recommended to them by their medical doctor. COVID really sped up this process. In 2016, there were 350,000 televisits to MDs. Now, televisits are one small component of remote patient management. Last year, though, just to get the idea, last year there were 1 billion visits to MDs that were televisits. And here's what that looked like. Last year, 1 out of every 5 visits in medicine was a televisit. 1 out of 5 was a televisit. 75% of hospitals in the United States are now using remote patient management. Literally, when people, and the average is 50% of the people that go into a hospital leave with an app from that hospital that hospital is now communicating information to them about how to live and what to eat. And they're in our patients' living rooms and bedrooms. They're in our kitchens. White Plains Hospital is a perfect example of this. They have a program called Hospital at Home, and they are sending information, education, resources, etc., right to our patients' homes. And yet the philosophy we know behind what they're sending them is absolutely destructive to the principles that we're talking about. I went and Googled the top 10 lifestyle diseases because, again, if they're lifestyle diseases, you change the lifestyle, it means they're preventable. And here they are. You and I would come up with this list in 5 minutes. It took me 2 on Google. Here we go. Heart disease, stroke, obesity, type 2 diabetes, lung cancer, Alzheimer's. Watch. We know that these are primarily lifestyle diseases. 2 examples. James Chestnut talks about type 2 diabetes, that if we would just get people to walk 30 minutes a day and consume 2 extra vegetables in their diet during the course of the week, that 80% of all diabetes, type 2 diabetes, would be gone tomorrow. We know, for example, with Alzheimer's, while there's no cure for Alzheimer's, we do know that there are precursors that are indicators. For example, belly fat in their midlife is a primary precursor to Alzheimer's. If you knew that and you cleaned that up early in life, wouldn't you have a better chance of not getting Alzheimer's later in life? So you get the idea. I then went and looked up, and I won't go through all of them. I went to the various organizations that treat these conditions. Here we go. The American Heart Association. Here's what they recommend on their website. Stop smoking, eat better, clean up your diet. In other words, get rid of the toxins and crap. Lower your blood pressure, which we know happens thanks to Dick Holtz when we give an adjustment. Get 150 minutes of exercise every week. Get your weight under control. Reduce stress, big one. Reduce stress, limit alcohol. Stroke from Harvard. Lower your blood pressure, lose weight, exercise 30 minutes a day, drink in moderation, quit smoking. Obesity. Change how you sleep. We know that bad sleep habits have a lot to do contributing to obesity. Stop sitting, in other words, get exercise. Change your diet, both the portions and kinds of foods that you're eating. Reduce stress. Alzheimer's from NIH. Get 150 minutes of exercise, stop smoking. Do you think we're seeing a pattern here? Moderate alcohol, get your mind controlling your diet rather than your diet controlling your mind. Get your brain learning new things. In other words, get your brain integrated and working. Obviously, identify any head traumas and figure out how to clean up your weight and how you sleep. We'll do one more. Arthritis from New York University. Get exercise, change your diet, get your weight under control, limit alcohol. So here it is, folks. Here are the themes. You got to get moving. You got to exercise. 2, you got to reduce toxins, all the mercury and pollution and plastics that we put into our body. And then you need to change your diet, learn how to eat correctly. Got to get your weight under control, learn how to sleep, get your brain integrated and functioning, reduce stress through mindfulness, and lower your blood pressure. Folks, this is our lifestyle in chiropractic, isn't it? You cannot understand the principles of chiropractic and not own these particular concepts. And look at this. Medicine's got the idea. This is from the Cleveland Clinics. This is on their webpage. How do you clean these things up? Diet, movement, sleep, stress relief, mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, and getting connected with other healthy human beings, because that's critical for us if we're going to be whole, healthy people. So here we go. I believe that chiropractors have more to offer than adjustments. The problem is, while they do this every day, you and I do this every day, we never get paid for it, and we give the information out poorly. I'll give you an example. Let's say a patient gets up off your table, which happens to you all the time, and says to you, "Doc, my wife and I just got pregnant. Do you think chiropractic would be good for her during her pregnancy? Are there any problems? What about when the baby's born?" Chiropractor has a whole waiting room full of people. What the chiropractor does is try to give them a quick 5 to 6 minute explanation of the value of chiropractic before they have to go to the next room and see a patient. The patient walks out with no research, no information, no way to back up, probably only heard a small portion of that. And in fact, we did a focus group of 25 patients. We kept them from different offices across the United States and Canada. And we found out a lot about what patients think about chiropractic. The number one thing they said, though, all of them independently said this: we have more questions to ask our chiropractor, but we don't ask because we know they're too busy. We then said to them, well, then since you're not getting the information from your chiropractor, where are you getting it? And they said, well, we go to WebMD and to Google. Folks, I have to tell you, the information that you get in WebMD and Google is not the information that you and I would give them. So chiropractors, while we have this amazing, magical thing called the chiropractic adjustment in our chiropractic care, we also have something as magical, which is information that allows people to build lifestyles of prevention and wellness for them and their families throughout their lifetime. So How do you, though, monetize this? How do you actually have the time to do it? In chiropractic, this is the chiropractic formula, business formula. If you take the number of new patients for any time frame and you multiply them times the number of how long the patient stays, how many visits, we call that patient visit average, PVA. That equals your office volume. So for example, if you had 20 new patients in a month and your PVA was 20, you could pretty well assume that that office is going to see about 400 office visits that month. You multiply that times your collections ratios. Forget this red part right now. Once you take the volume and you multiply it times your collections ratio, that gives you your gross income. You subtract your overhead from that, and that gives you your net income at the end of the month. Chiropractors always came up to me when we were doing quests going, how can I see more patients? How can I make more money? And I have to tell you, I have no direct answers for that, because the only things that influence finances in the office is how many new patients do you get, how long do they stay, how well do you collect, and how well do you control your overhead. And really, collections and overhead are on the negative side of this. Those are just things you have to do in order to be successful. But the only way to stimulate more money is to get more new patients or have them stay for longer periods of time. So real quick practice management lesson. PVA, how long a patient stays, is directly related to three things. The philosophy of the doctor. Does the doctor have a long-term philosophy or we'll treat you for 5 visits for back pain and get you out? What is the philosophy of the doctor? How well the staff is trained to communicate with the patients. And the most important issue is patient education. When we were doing quests, the average doctor that entered our program had a PVA of 30. The average PVA of the doctor at the end of a year in quest, where they learned how to educate patients, etc., was 60. They literally doubled their practices without getting more new patients because of education. We'll get there. Secondly, how do you get more new patients? Well, there's 3 ways in our world today. I sit on a group that has more than 100 chiropractic offices, and they have 300 employees keeping track of where patients come from and how much it costs them to procure a patient. Events such as going out and do spinal screenings, standing at booths in a mall, et cetera, cost them about $340 to get a new patient. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, about $240 a patient. Ready for this? It costs them $18 to get a referral. Obviously, if we can amp up referrals in our practice, it's a much more profitable way and produces a higher quality of patient, as we've all known over the years. The last thing I'm going to show you is that there's a new way to add income sources to your practice, and that's through what we call MLIQ, which is this app that we've developed, which stands for My Lifestyle IQ. It's a remote patient management system that uses this app called MLIQ to manage the patient's lifestyle changes along with their chiropractic care. And it's designed to reduce the amount of time you have to spend with a patient. I'll give you an example. Patient gets up off the table again, says, "Doc, my wife and I, we just got pregnant. What do you think about chiropractic care for her? Is it safe? What about the child? Is there any research on this?" Instead of me giving them a bad 7-minute answer while the reception room's backed up, I simply say to them, go to your MLIQ app, go to the program section, click on pregnancy. There's a 5-trimester program by Claudia Onrig, one of the experts in our profession, who will take you through the 3 months before pregnancy, trimester 1, 2, and 3, and the 3 months for mom and baby after pregnancy, with all the things that you need, all the information, and the research articles that you can look at. Boom, after 1 minute, I'm off to the next patient, and all of a sudden, I gave a patient what they needed for the next 1.5 years to really go in and understand the value of chiropractic. I saved myself time, I did a better job, and we'll talk about monetization of this information in just a moment. Everyone with me? So this is what the app looks like when you open it up. It's divided into 6 domains. I'll just walk you through and then I'll comment on a couple of these. One is vital health. This is a program designed by a group of chiropractors who practice functional medicine. As we know, there are 6 precursors to disease, in functional medicine, like environmental toxins, neurostructural integrity, cardiometabolic wellness, etc. They designed 10 questions in each of these 6 areas. A patient takes it, and at the end of it, they get a score between 1 and 100, and it lets them know whether the lifestyle they're currently maintaining is leading them towards a healthy life and a healthy last 25 years of their life, or where they're headed in the wrong direction and what the outcome might be. The flourish section is what the Cleveland Clinics talked about when they talked about reducing stress, mindfulness, gratification, social connectedness. This was designed by a group of doctors in the psychology department at Emory University. It's a 20-question test that the patient takes. At the end of that, they get a score, and it directs them into various things like how to create positive mental attitude, basic meditations they can use for stress reduction, visualizing their day, a whole series of projects and products. The next one is brain health, designed by a group of functional neurologists and chiropractic, so that a patient, after taking a test and getting a score, and then being put in either a basic, intermediate, or advanced program, can do a series of exercises twice a day, 10 minutes each time, that helps them create integration of the cerebellum, brainstem, cortex, etc., and then allows them to begin to stimulate areas of their brain so their brain is having proper function along with the care they're getting in chiropractic. The nourish section is exactly what it sounds like. About 70% of it is how to get the toxins out of your body. The other 30% is about how to learn how to eat correctly, and it has information here on everything from how to shop the perimeter. We actually go into a grocery store with a chiropractor, and we walk the perimeter where all the Whole Foods are and how to shop that area versus shopping up and down the aisles where all the processed foods are. So it's about 30% or 70% getting the toxins out of your body, then 30% learning how to eat right. And it has information. If a patient asks me in my office, for example, Doc, I've been reading about intermittent fasting. What do you think about that? I simply say to them, go to your app, go to the Nourish section. There's a 7-minute piece by Don Clem on there on intermittent fasting, and it's a good place to get started. Boom, I'm off to the next patient, and I've answered the question that the patient needs in a very effective way. Movement is exactly what it is. I'll show you this and how it works. It's about flexibility, strength, and endurance. And the last section is a section called programs, which are the programs that we referred patient to. So that patient that got pregnant with he and her wife, and the wife got pregnant, we can refer them here, and I'll show you what those programs look like and how all this has been monetized. Follow along with me. So here are the programs that are in the app currently. There's a weight loss program. There's 2 of them. One is a 6-week free program with all the workbooks, audio tapes, everything. They just follow along with the instructor and follow the 6-week program. It was put together by Don Clem. But for those patients that need more discipline and want to have a personal coach, there's a way that they can sign up with a personal coach who will be with them for almost up for a year. It's a government-approved program, and they get a private one-on-one coach. That program is $3,000. $1,000 of that goes back to the chiropractor because the information always is filtered back to the chiropractor so that you keep track and are responsible for managing the patient. And the rest of the money goes to the coaching programs. They're literally with the patient during 6 months while they lose the weight, and then for a number of months after that to make sure they don't fall off the wagon. Same thing for gut restoration. There are 2 free programs on gut restoration and then a coaching program for patients that want everything, the vitamins, the notes, the private one-on-one, everything, the lab test, everything just to show up at their front doorstep. There's a 6-week sleep program. The pregnancy program, I'm not going to read through these. You can see them. We just added in a new one, the long-haul COVID program. As we know, long-haul COVID is becoming a huge issue in healthcare today. People that have brain fog, confusion, have fatigue all of the time. The research coming out of the universities in Europe says we don't know what the solution is, but it's related to the vagus nerve. And so a group of functional neurologists and chiropractic put a program together for that to assist people through the programs. So these are the programs, with the exception of 4 programs on here. They're all free. And even the ones that do have a fee associated with them, like the weight loss program, has a free program The private coaching programs are just there for people that want that additional discipline. Next is patient education, which is sort of our nemesis in chiropractic. We know we need to do it, but it's redundancy. It's hard to do. We stopped doing it after a period of years in a very intense way. And yet it is the key to increasing PVA and follow through. What we did with MLIQ is we created a 13-part weekly drip campaign patient education program. I'm going to show you one of these with Bill Esteb, a video in just a moment. So you can see the progression. I do the first tape. It's about 4.5 minutes long on the basic principles of chiropractic. Brad Glowacki does what's health. Heidi Havik does how the nervous system controls function. You can see the people down through here. Bill Esteb does his road to recovery, to talk to patients about care beyond their initial intensive care. So I'm going to show you that videotape right now. It's about 2.5 minutes, and you get a feel very quickly of what this patient education 13-week drip campaign is like.
Like you, I'm a chiropractic patient. In fact, I've been seeing chiropractors for over 40 years. I'm often asked why I continue to see a chiropractor when I feel great and have for years. Let me explain. You may have seen this chart when visiting your chiropractor. It shows what you can expect in the days, weeks, and months ahead, and why many of us opt for some type of ongoing chiropractic care. Most patients consult a chiropractor because they're suffering from some type of ache or pain. They want relief, so they begin with frequent visits during the initial intensive phase of their care. Some see fast improvement, reaching the yellow zone where they're feeling better in just days or weeks. Others, suffering from major trauma, often find their symptoms appear to worsen before gradually improving and reaching the yellow zone. Thankfully, most patients see steady improvement as each visit builds on the ones before, until they too are feeling better, reaching decision time. It's called decision time because you have a decision to make. Will you build on the investment you've already made, continuing your chiropractic care to strengthen muscles and soft tissues that occur after symptoms resolve? Or will you coast? Of course, the only way to coast is to go downhill. And without strengthening your spine and nervous system, you'll be predisposed to a relapse. When that happens, you'll be welcomed back, and the process begins again. And like before, when you're feeling better, you'll have a decision to make. Will you continue your care to strengthen and retrain your spine and nervous system for more lasting results, or coast, risking still another relapse? Regular chiropractic checkups, like brushing and flossing your teeth, are designed to keep you at your best, avoiding a return of your original problem. Every patient needs to make this decision at some point. When you have, let your chiropractor know. That way, he or she can celebrate your success and archive your records should you ever need care in the future, or begin the next exciting phase of your care, designed to optimize your health and well-being. Remember, your chiropractor's job is to offer you the finest chiropractic care possible. And your job is to decide how much of it you want. And that's why I've decided to receive chiropractic care for life.
I know we're getting close to the end. I want to just go through a couple last points, but you can see how this would increase PVA if people begin to get these concepts in an organized way over a 13-week period in their office. Let's assume that, in fact, and we've done this in the offices we've been studying, let's say that you got an average of 2 new patients a month, and your case average was $2,500. What impact would that have on your income over the course of a year? Just think about that. 2 cases, $2,500 a month, $5,000 per month times 12 months would be $60,000. So I have to tell you, how do we increase referrals? And we've done this in the app. Let me give you an idea of why this increases. We've been seeing in our offices from 5 to 10 extra patients, not just 2, 5 to 10 extra patients every month. Let's say I'm a patient and I'm at work at lunch, or I'm at a party and I'm talking to someone about, I've been seeing a chiropractor and my headaches have been getting better and I love it. and a patient, prospective patient at the party or at work says, yeah, you know what? I've been thinking about seeing a chiropractor for years. The patient, I'll say to them, well, yeah, you ought to. You ought to see my chiropractor. He's really cool. End of the conversation. Nothing happens. There's no follow-up. That prospective patient is still no closer to getting in your office. With MLIQ, watch what happens. I'm at lunch. I say to someone, gosh, my headaches have been getting so much better because of my chiropractic care. And someone says, gosh, I've been thinking about seeing a chiropractor. All of a sudden, the patient just pulls out their iPhone, which they have with them. They click the referral button on the home page. They put in the patient's name. They put in even how they want the patient to be contacted. Call my prospective patient, email some information. I'll bring them with me on a visit, whatever. They submit that. They hit the submit button. The next day when the staff walks in and turns on the computer, all the referrals from the day before that they normally would never see are in the computer with exactly what the office needs to do to contact that referral and get them in for care. Like I said, our office has been seeing 5 to 10 additional referrals each month. You multiply that times 25 case average, and I have to tell you, they're seeing a lot of patients. So watch, here's what we have come to realize, that if you add up 2 new referrals a month, a patient doing a weight loss program or a gut restoration program, just 1 a month, and then a 2 PVA increase in an office, that adds up without doing any extra work, in fact, saving you time, to over $1,000 in the practice. So let me show you this real quickly, how we get these scores. I went through the various sections, what they're designed to do. Also, when the patient comes into the app, they list their health goals. We asked these 25 patients in this focus group, well, if you had questions to ask your chiropractor, but you didn't, what did you want to know? And so here they are. How do I have brain fog. How do I increase clarity and focus? I want to enhance my immunity. That one came up a lot in the COVID world. I want to increase my strength, flexibility, and endurance. Whatever the patient marks down anywhere in this app shows up in your office in the patient's file, so you know exactly what they're interested in. So if a patient said, I want to enhance my immunity, on their next visit while they're laying on the adjusting table, you can comment that you saw that was of interest to them. You say, go right to the program section of the MLIQ app. There's a whole program in there on immunity from a chiropractic standpoint. All right, this will give you one example. I'll show you one example of how the app works, and then we'll wrap this up. So let's take the movement or the exercise section. When the patient goes into this section, there are 10 tests that the patient has to take. And I have to tell you, the tests are really hard. I'm going to show you one of them. One of them says, can you do a squat facing a wall, right? So if the patient gets to that and they go, I don't know how to do that test, they simply click on this icon that says learn more, and the following videotape shows up for them to show them how to do this. It takes 10 seconds.
So this is the squat assessment. You're going to start facing the wall, toes against the wall, feet hip to shoulder length apart. You are going to descend into a squat and get as close to 90 degrees as you can, and then come out of it and stand back up. Now go record your score.
I have to tell you, try it later. It's really hard to do. But when the patient gets done doing that, they then go in and they mark their score. And their score will either be, I couldn't get up, I got up with help, I got up but my forehead hit the wall, which means the wrong muscles are working. So they take these 10 tests, all similar to that, and then they get a score. That score puts them in either a basic, intermediate, or advanced program. And then the patient has the choice to either do a gym exercise or a yoga routine. So let's say the patient was intermediate in this case, and they wanted to do the yoga routine. So every morning they just click on that, and this videotape would come up, and they just follow it along for 17 minutes.
The intermediate yoga sequence is designed to build body awareness and improve strength and flexibility through a mindful flow sequence, focusing on proper.
We're just skipping through so you can see it. You get the idea. So literally the patient every morning just gets up, flips on this, and they follow the routine. We change the routines out every few months so the patients don't get bored doing them. The last thing that's in the app is what we call the NeuroScore. It's a 100-question test on things that we know, thoughts, traumas, and toxins that affect a person's nerve system. Do you smoke? Do you eat processed foods? Do you drink out of plastic bottles, etc.? When they get done, they get a NeuroScore, and then every Monday morning, they get 5 things, they get pinged with 5 things to do this week. Like this week, the 5 things were, when you ate breakfast this morning, did you eat out of a box or did you eat whole foods? They mark which days they ate whole foods. When you texted today, did you text with your head up or with your head down? They mark that. And over a period of time, with this subtle training of them thinking about how things affect their body and their nerve system, which means we're now on their mind 24 hours a day, literally over a period of time, they begin to change their lifestyle and their nerve system. This is the form that shows up when a patient walks in. It shows what they're working on, what all their scores were, whether they're doing the program or they just got started and stopped. This creates table talk for you when you're seeing the patient in the office. It's no additional work for you or the staff. This summer, we're adding in biometrics. So if people have Fitbits and Garmin and Apple Watches, whatever they record, like Garmin is great for recording steps and sleep, that would automatically download into the app, and that would be available to you in the patient's office. What does it cost? It costs $14.99 a month. The patient, when they just click on a QR code. You say, how do I get patients to get it? It's simple. At the report or on any visit, you just say to the patient, hey, we use an app to help monitor your health. It'll help with your results. You'll be able to chat with us 24/7 or leave us messages and we'll get back to you. There's information on the experts and all the research that you'll need. And we want you to go out to the front desk, click on the QR code. It'll take you right to the app store and you can get signed up. That's it. That's all it takes. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to tell them what it's about. You just tell them it's an app you use to help monitor their health. They go out, they click on the QR code. It takes them to the app store. They sign up. They either pay monthly or yearly. At a yearly rate, it's about a little over $11 a month for them to be able to own the app. All the information once they've signed up that they put in the app comes back to your office so that you know what they're doing and working on. What does it cost to be an MLIQ office? It costs you $50 a month. That's it. A little bit more for the patient education and drip campaigns, but basically it costs you $50 a month to be an MLIQ office. And that's it. So if you're interested in MLIQ and this remote patient management system, we have Zoom calls that you can get on. We'll go through the whole program with you, how to use it. We have training programs for your staff. If you go to the My Lifestyle IQ, mylifestyleiq.com, you can go there. You can set up a Calendly event and set up a time you want to speak to us. You'll get one-on-one attention from one of the people that work with MLIQ. They'll walk you through the app, what it looks like in your office, how to get signed up, all those kinds of things. So My Lifestyle IQ, go there. You'll see the information for both the doctors and the patients and the way to sign up on a calendar to have a relationship with us. That's it. Folks, we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do. And it means that we have a way today of connecting via the internet with people that believe what we believe, but they don't know that we believe the same thing that they believe. And it's a way of attracting those people to our office for higher quality care, for better quality patients, and also to provide patients the lifestyle that you and I take for granted because we live it every day with our families and our children and our friends. But our patients who are starting from scratch, getting under care, understanding this different value of healthcare, those patients are our responsibility, and we can literally help them to live the lives that they have the potential to live.
Thank you so very much. If you have a question for Dr. Riekeman, please go ahead and submit that now. If you're watching this in the recording, like so many of you do, and we had a couple of people had to jump off and get back to taking care of their patients, just know that you can pop your questions into the chat. It automatically emails those to me when you're watching the recording. I will get those to Dr. Riekeman and my Lifestyle IQ team so we can get those questions answered for you anytime. So I even forewarned him. I was like, some of y'all watch these webinars 5-6 months down the road, and that I would be reaching out to him. So thank you so very much. You know, it's not very often that I take notes during webinars, but I did.
You're such a good student.
Well, and then I started downloading the apps. I was like, this is so cool. So I just want to thank everybody for being a part of the webinar series today and sharing in my joy of having our first time. He's the first time presenter, and it definitely won't be the last. Thank you so much, Dr. Riekeman, for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to be here today, especially considering everything that is going on in the world. Because y'all were just hit by a hurricane last week.
Yep.
Yes. So we most definitely appreciate the time that you took. Just a reminder to everybody else, we do not have a webinar next week. I'll be flying home from Alaska, so we're skipping a week, and we'll be jumping back in. Last week's webinar got postponed. Dr. Lewin had a death in the family, but we've rescheduled it for next month. If you did register for that webinar, just know you do not have to register again. We are just move the date and your registration to the new date. So I'll see y'all in a couple of weeks. And if you're in Alaska this week, I look forward to seeing you there. So everybody have an amazing rest of your day, a fantastic week, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.